Hey guys, I'm Sashank, an MD PhD student at the University of Florida. In this video, I wanted to share with you a system I made for writing grant applications that allows us to best leverage AI language models. We'll first discuss some of the problems with the usual way of doing things, my solution, and some of the features that it has, and then finally a short setup tutorial. Okay, getting started. We can see here the GitHub page for the system. GitHub is a place where people store computer code, but we can actually use it for this as well. And just to start with some of the motivation is that usually we use Microsoft Word documents for grant applications. And while they're convenient in some ways, there are also some problems. The formatting is hard to get right and you have to fiddle with it every time. It's hard to see changes over time in previous versions, and you end up with files like, specific aims version 5 underscore, no experiment or something like that. Grants have many sections, but these monolithic Word docs are a bit unwieldy if you try to put it all in one file. And citation handling is there in some places like Microsoft Word on desktop, but not there on some online versions and other things like that. And there are also more problems when we talk about using AI to help us, which it can be pretty helpful if we use it correctly. One problem with using the standard just chat window like this ChatGPT window here is that it only gets a static snapshot of whatever paragraph or file we toss in there. And another thing is that it can only see that one paragraph or file that we throw in there, and it can't see the whole picture of the graph, of the grant. Okay, so what would a solution look like? Actually, the problems that I talked about are basically all problems that computer programmers have run into and have been trying to solve. They also work with multiple text files code that have strong interdependencies, and they want to be able to see the change in that over time when they add new features or when someone gives them an updated version of a file. And they also want to use these new AI agents. So what we can do is we can leverage those tools so that we can get a much more sort of like AI native experience, along with other bells and whistles that don't even have to do with AI directly. Okay, so the system we're going to use uses something called a program called Visual Studio Code, which is the most popular code editors that computer programmers use to write code. Let's go there. And what we're looking at here is actually that same file that we were looking at in GitHub, this README file, which is like, whenever you see that in programming, it's like, oh, that's like the first file I should read that will tell me more about what's going on here. And indeed this does. Okay, but now let's go through some of the features that this system has. The first thing we'll notice, and maybe there's a lot that we can notice over here, is that we have these files that end in .md, and indeed if we go to even the specific aims over here, we can see that it's not a Word doc, it is a .md. MD is Markdown, which is a file format that's sort of similar to like .txt, or it's a plain text format in that sense, but it also has some formatting built in, like asterisks on the sides means that some part of text is bolded. And actually that this Markdown file formatting is also used in the newest NIH BioSketch format, so you might actually run into it anyway there. Markdown is really great. We can see over here that the actual source of the grant exists in this folder called Markdown, and we can see a specific aims page here, and a research strategy page, and a training activities page like this. And even though these are here on their own, what this system allows us to do is to stitch them all together into a PDF that has perfect NIH formatting. And I'm quickly scrolling through the PDF now. And the way that this is accomplished, I don't want to get too much into the details, but there's a folder called draft.qmd that uses this program called Quarto. And you can see here we're just sort of chaining these files together. Okay. Not only can you export to PDF, and those all live by default in the PDF folder, you can also export to Word doc. The Word doc won't have all the perfect formatting, but what's important is that you can export to Word doc, because many times PIs and collaborators want a Word doc that they can highlight and comment in, and that's actually a pretty nice way to get feedback. And you can still do that. And the way that we do these things is that there are these files called that end in sh, that if you look at inside of them, it looks like code and stuff, but we actually won't need to necessarily use those manually. But this is just some of the functionality that we get, that we can export to PDF, we can export to docs from the same source files over here. And maybe now is a good time to get into the actual sort of AI portion, and there are other things there as well. So what we have here is this file structure, and on the right side of the screen we can see a chat window. And here I have sort of codecs enabled, and now I can talk to this codecs, which is OpenAI or ChatGPT's like coding agent, because we're coding, right? We're in a computer programmer's like code editor, even though what we're doing is writing a grant. What we can do here is we can ask it anything about any part of the grant. Maybe what we can say is, does the training, training activity section and research strategy, maybe, let's see, work together well? How can we improve them? Okay, so I'm asking it a question here about two different files, and what it will do is it will just go ahead and directly look at these files, the version that is most updated that we're currently working with, and it will go off of that. But also, check this out. When we say this, it first says, I'll read the repo guidance. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the repository is basically another term for project folder, but the guidance that it's reading is a set of files that we have specifically for steering and guiding these AI agents. So all of these coding agents, by the way, they're taught that whenever they look in a folder, they should look for a file called agentsmd, or sometimes claude.md if you're using Anthropic's Claude agent. And this is the first thing they go to. And what we have written in here is you should start with the AI folder, and then read these folders and read these files in there. Okay, what's that? Well, we have a folder right here that is specifically for telling AI agents how to behave and things like that. We have a style guide in here, for example, and this is this describes how you should talk AI. Here are principles in writing. Do not use those M dashes that look AI. Here is how you should write in an NIH appropriate manner, and you can edit these as well. This is yours. You can say I want you to sound more like this. If it's talking really long, you can say use brevity in your writing. You can steer all of this here. That's great. And all of the agents sort of read this, and this is a benefit that we get because we're using this integrated system. Let's go back to what the AI agent has said over here. So after it worked for a bit, it says yes, they work well together at the concept level, and here's an opportunity to make them work together better. And it gives some suggestions as to what to do. And you can even have it, if you want, and there are permissions here as well, you can have it go and make those changes, and it'll go ahead and do it. This is really handy. You can also, I want to talk about the references that we have, the reference setup. So you can see in here that I'm just saying, Bagley, intrathecal, blah, blah, intrathecal, blah, blah, blah. And what we have over here in our refs folder is we have a .bib file, which is a way of having, like storing your citations. And here I have this DOI list. Okay, what's going on here? So if you want to have AI agents do a little bit of a literature review and find articles for you, excuse me, I recommend asking them to output a list of DOIs. Then what I do is I go into Zotero, which is a citation manager, and I use this magic wand button and I paste those in. And then it goes and finds the information for all of these citations. This prevents the AI from hallucinating some study that doesn't exist, which would be a terrible thing. We want to do good science. So, but now that you have these, you can check to see, okay, do they make sense? And then what you can do is you can export the library in this better BibTeX format, and you can choose so that it ends up over here. And based on this, Quarto, which we mentioned earlier, makes it so that you can write these just citations, and it'll like auto-fill it, so that when you actually render the whole thing, let me switch to here, that you just get them in numbers, 1, 2, 5. Like it'll sort all of that out for you. That's pretty handy. Another thing that's handy with having these AI agents is that if you get a feedback, like let's say your PI just gave you or collaborator just sent you a Teams message or something like that. And I'm just looking for the correct folder here. I have this feedback folder here that you can just kind of copy paste the Teams message in there and just be like, oh, here's what my PI said, on this date. I think the structure is strong, but blah, 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 blah. And you can say, look at the Teams message feedback I got. Plan how to address that. Boom. And now it will, hopefully, you might need to sear it a little bit. Feedback file, hopefully it'll, once you have a longer chat window and it sees, kind of what you're doing, it'll, and perfect, it did it. And it can also, by the way, see whatever file you're viewing. So maybe it also use that. So now it can say, okay, how should I address this? Basically, you can just drop your feedback in here and let the agent do a little bit of that triaging and synthesizing to see, how to address this. You can also, and I just have this folder called Other over here, just straight up have the instructions for the grant. Or, there's an examples folder that currently doesn't have any folders in there, but that's where you can put grants that maybe you or collaborators wrote that you think are really good that you can throw in there. So then it can learn, here's how I want the grants to look. Coming back to the chat window here, it has said here's how you can address it. Okay, that's great. These are the main things that I wanted to cover in terms of features. Now we can move to the setup. How do we get this set up? So now I'm going to pull over my little guide over here. So I think the first thing you should do to get set up here is you should go over here to your web browser and download Visual Studio Code, and it'll have it'll detect what operating system you're on. I'm on Linux, and it will show you there. Once you've done that, so kind of along with that, I highly encourage you to actually buy an AI subscription, like one of the $20 a month plans for Anthropic's Claude or OpenAI's ChatGPT, something like that. Doing this, you get access to the actual top quality models, and you also are limited by the free versions, like 30 messages a day or something like that. This is money that you're spending, but I think it'll really be good, because if you have some like low quality model from like a year ago, that almost negates the benefit. You want to be using the best models. Okay, so once you have VS Code installed and you're able to open it up, and whatever you choose to do with the AI subscription, second, I think you should first you should open up VS Code, and now we're gonna start setting things up. You should open up VS Code, and what we want to do is something called cloning this repository, or downloading it. Both of these are fine ways to do it. But if you need help in like, okay, how do I download it and open it up in VS Code and stuff like that, there's actually a file called setup that contains all of the technical details. And you can read this if you want, or you can just drop it into an AI agent, either in the browser if you don't have your VS Code sort of thing set up yet, or once you do, then you can just say, help me set up over here, and that'll work pretty well. Okay, and there's that setup. And actually, once you have it, use the setup, and then clone the repository, or just download it as a zip file and inflate it, and it can help you with all of those things. Then, in order to just get a bit more acquainted, there's even a you could ask your AI agent to like help you on a guided tour, and there's a file that sort of like takes you through some of the features, and hopefully that's useful. And then after that, then there are some other programs that you need to sort of install onto your system in order to be able to do the different things, like build the Markdown to PDF, stuff like that. There's like you'll probably need to like download and install a few things, but the agent can tell you what's on your system, what is the correct thing to install, and it can make that process much easier. Okay, that's I think everything that I wanted to cover in this video. Let me know if you find it useful. Feel free to leave comments, or reach out to me. I'll have information, including the link to all of these in the video description, so you can go ahead and look at that. Thanks so much.